Okay. So let's settle into our heart opener beginning. So you'll sit in front of your bolster that is across your mat horizontally. And then I have a stack of blankets and a towel, and all the stack behind you that will be under your brain could be moved and shifted until you feel like you have enough space in the throat. Okay? So the key with all these openers is that you're kind of peeling open and working on this weave of the ribs. So let's feel what that weaving and unraveling is going to be like in the beginning. So you're going to sit with your body as close to the bolster as possible. And then I would encourage you to have your block right in hand so that as you lower back, if I could actually hold on to my bone structure in my low back, I would try to kind of peel it apart here so that when I let my lower back kind of shelf move onto this bolster shelf, right, that I can scoot my feet closer in, and then noticing what starts to work its way into this is your neck, starts to feel this. So what I'll encourage you to do is when you lower back onto your blanket and towel, you're going to lift up your hips and put a block conveniently underneath. And you'll notice that sure is nice to have that block height. So you've added on to this hip and rib shelf underneath to lift it up. And then there's a buoyancy, right, and an experience of openness naturally with the props. Okay. So add some weight to your ribs, add some breathing weight to your lungs. And so I place the sand across the upper ribs. Well, actually, this is where they intersect, right, where the ribs come together, obviously below the sternum. So if you feel your throat a little challenged, you're probably in the right space, right? Xiphoid process. So when I'm here, I'm going to scoot my feet a little wider, and I'm going to play a bit during the process of the pose with my feet in some width, with my feet a little closer, and then with my legs stretching down, and then with the feet together and the knees out. So I'll instruct that as we go. So first, get your belt. Let's all hold the belt. So our belt or our strap, whatever you have that is a kind of a narrow, long piece of fabric. And you'll hold on to that so that the arm experience is sensation of coordinating strength with the arms, but also opening the chest. So if your shoulders are feeling some residual sensation from whatever you may have done yesterday in a practice, this is a good one for releasing that tension. So holding on and feeling your shoulder blades moving in towards the spine. So there's no trying to round your back here, it's arching the back. Be wide with the hold on the belt. Give yourself a generous amount of width. And then feel if you can either bring your knees together or the legs straight down or the feet together and the knees out. Exploring and then reporting to yourself what feels not only soothing, but respectful for your alignment in your structure. Not necessarily is it a deeper stretch, but does it feel centered in both sides? So I like the legs stretching straight down. Then there is a little hook of awareness in my lower back, and I'm trying to really open up my chest. And my breathing gets a little slower and fuller. And trying to stay rather defined on the reach of my feet away. So heels reach away. Open the chest. Okay, resting your eyes from top to bottom. You want the legs to be very close. Now, if you've decided to opt for a reclining cobbler's pose, feet together, knees out, that might be quite interesting for you to evaluate the flexibility to start the practice in your hips. So isn't it nice to be in your own space to explore which direction? Knees together, feet together, legs side by side. And let's arrive in our breath pace for a few more moments. 4 counts in, ribs lift, and 5 counts out. Ribs breathing in, feeling. Exhaling, let the breath pour out. Okay, now this is just the beginning of inversion today. So this has a little mild amount of inverting the body, right? It lifts up the abdominal organs. But we'll be moving them a little bit higher in a few moments. So really reversing that, the way gravity, right, is moving through the vital organs. So feel a few more moments. I would recommend to let go of the belt and feel the arms straight out from the side walls of the chest. Feel the natural form of the elbows when they relax into the floor. So you're truly in a chest opener. Now, if I break pose with the knees bending, you got to break pose somehow, which is probably at a joint, right? You're going to hinge at the hips and the knees. Now, feeling kind of politely pressuring down into your feet. Polite pressure. This feels a bit like a bridge pose, so we're going to bridge this one into legs up, which ought to be quite interesting. So you're going to move your sand aside. Keep it nearby, don't toss it too far out of town. And then as you bring your arms to reach back, if you have a lot of height under your head, you want to minimize that, start to minimize that as a distraction. So I'm going to move my towel first. Keep it simple. And then as I change my bolster here, you've got a block set in front of that. So you're going to move the block to the side. Push down into your feet. Remember, make that footprint down. And then I walk my feet closer to my bolster. Knees are perked up, heels are lifting. And I'm going to push my bolster forward underneath the back of my pelvi. And then move one of my blankets back so I'm left with one blanket under my brain, right, not under my shoulders. And then I'm going to take one knee in at first and just kind of situate my feeling of my left foot on the floor. Let's go right knee in so we're in the same pose pattern. And then alternate your knee towards chest, right? It's not going to touch chest likely. And start to exercise that potential. Remember, part of potential is potent. So you want to try to start to work your way towards inversion with some classic core awakenings, right, in the midsection. So if your lower back is feeling a little bit kind of uncomfortable right now or too arched, I recommend you bring, and we'll all go to this, knees up, both together, close-ish, and let the body wobble a little side to side, kind of squirm your back, squirmy lumbars, until you feel that you are in a lift with your hips, right? So all size bolsters work for this. If you have a pretty bulky bolster, you're getting an inversion out of this, right? So you're reversing the way gravity flows, not just through your bones, but in your vital organs. Okay, so let's take it now. We're going to get our belt, and I want you to take a hold of your belt and place your belt under your right foot above and push the foot up like it's trying to hold up the ceiling, okay? So my left leg stretches down. Now feel that right foot push up and resist the belt. Be sure both hands can hold on to that belt and properly tug on it so there's resistance. Sometimes you've got to create your own weight training, right? And so when you've got a belt, get to work with it and push up to hold up the ceiling. This is a whole different kind of animal with the practice, right? With resistance. And of course, you get to prescribe your intensity right now. Right, you could simply have the foot in the belt and that's your calling. Okay. So with that resistance, can you maintain that you're pushing into the belt and then you're going to close off the belt and hold it with your left hand. Stretch your right arm straight open out to the side of the shoulder and then cross the right leg to left. Anything that's a cross that's going to go opposite side of the leg and push that side of the room you're moving towards. I know your ceilings are going to be moving here today and your walls. So push energetically through the belt. And then if that right hip is really popped up, I hope it has, you're going to let your brain center and establish who's in charge here. Your left arm, your hand, and then that's affecting your right hip. Okay, so feel the energy through the whole surface of the joint and then deeply establishing into the hip joint. That takes a little time, so we'll do this in 3 stages today with our hip. So we'll simply start here with a full brush of the leg, a full reach where it's straight-ish. Now as you bendish the knee, bendishing knee, bring the leg back center, and I'm hoping, we'll kind of toss this into it, you can buckle up your belt. This may take you out of sorts for a few moments. And I'm going to make a loop with that belt and place it to my foot base, to the ball of my foot, between the ball and the arch, somewhere central. And then as I loosen up the belt, I have it so it's longer than I think, right? I want to hold my occiput, so if you reach around to the back of your skull, where there's a bulge, right below the bulge is a flat spot, right? The occiput. And that's where the trapezius muscle, right, is inserted, right? So that's where it starts, interestingly enough. And other soft tissues as well. So what we'll do is I'll take the belt and place it there. I'm going to give myself a little space. And as I bring the belt to that spot, it's right above my ears, right? Yeah, you're used to this, having something right here around your ears these days. So you're going to get a feel here of that pressure, and it's a little too intense for my leg. So you never know each day what your range of motion is going to be. What is going to be, how do I decide? Well, get a feel that you have some traction in your neck, not too much, right? If it feels too intense, loosen up the belt. Please loosen it up if it feels too much. And you can add a sandbag to the left thigh or pass. You could do a sand pass and feel, right? I like the sand to be so it goes more diagonal on my left leg. And then that really adds a stretch into my right leg. So feel where the belt works for you. If it's a little higher on the back of your head than you thought, that's fine. For some of us, it has to do with our hair, right, where it holds on. So feel where you push into the right foot above and about another 8 breaths here. Okay, now I can't push up the ceiling quite the same. So I'm going to reroute my footing and have a little curiosity here about directional footing. Straight up, not turned out, not pivoting in. Belly full. And belly center. Now give your left leg permission to just be. If it's pivoting out, practice acknowledging how your hip fibers are responding to the stresses that you put on them in the practice. Witness breath. Now as I reach for my belt, and this time when I shift, I'm going to take the belt off the back of my head down onto the blanket, and then as I move my sand, if it's there, off my leg, I want you to switch so the left leg comes up. You're going to hold on to that knee with left hand and move the left knee out and the right leg out. And be realistic on how much stretch you're willing to press out into. So I'm going to push into my belt. And if I can't push into and activate the leg muscles, then I don't have any right to push to go that far. So as long as you can engage your muscles, then it's okay. But if you start to get a little slack in muscle involvement, then see if you can back up on how far out the leg is. Now move the right leg straight up, left knee center. Switch the foot in the belt. Left foot reaches up. It might be helpful here to feel both feet pushing. Feel the passing energy of the right leg moving down, stretching forward on the floor. And you be the decider if you like using sand on the top of the thigh. Remember, we wait until the brain float to bring that back on. So first things is to push up with your foot. Feel the fibers in the back of the left leg, and then with patience, you hold onto the belt with your right hand. Cross the left leg over. You feel as the balance from your back of the left leg across to kind of a ribbon to the hip. And then that provides balance all the way into the back. So it's worth your research to open out the left arm and to feel small movements. But you can tell here, this is probably a pose not to bounce in. Right? These are rather thick vertebrae, right? The lumbars are pretty thick, so we don't want to bounce around them. So we're trying to push into that left foot, relax the right leg, and then feature opening the chest. All the little things matter here. Setting into your practice awareness, eyes relaxing, breathing in, and enjoy the exhale out. Now as the left knee is in bending mode, feel what it's like to go from straight leg mode to bend leg mode. The leg mode, well, you likely feel a different pressure sometimes in the hip. So when we move this left leg back up center, see if you can keep the bones strong here. So resistance, resistance, resistance. Leg upness, okay? I'm going to add my sand initially on this side. There it is, to my right thigh. Seems like the reasonable place, okay? And see how that setting goes to start. This way, when I put the belt behind my head, I already have a reading on my range of motion. It's like you want to get a good reading on that range before you get the belt to the back of your head, right? So I've got a pretty good reading on how the range is in my thigh. Now, I'm not pushed onto my blanket. I'm not concerned about this appearance on my head. I'm really interested in how significant the belt is in supporting my pose. So be pretty fussy with this one. Fidget. Feel if you can get the neck to reach. Right? So all this side neck pressure that you may feel in some poses or in daytime, we want this to kind of slough off. It's like getting the neck to release. Sloughing off the skin cells here. Okay. So I open out the arms. Now you could have your arms in cactus. You could have them straight open or a little bit downwards. And then feel the foot flexing. I hope the belt stays under your foot. Sometimes they slide. And if my left leg is straight, yeah, let the leg basically drain out. So all the fluid is reversing its circulatory path back towards the heart and the lungs and the brain. So it's revitalizing on many levels for your nervous system, for your circulatory system. It's primarily a vascular pose, a heart-healthy pose. Relax your jaw. What does that mean? Does it mean after exhale, or is it something you can just do? So noticing now, get the feel of your left foot up. Feel when you move the sand away. And then as I take the belt from the back of my head, I'm going to move my left hand up and then slide my right foot in and pop up the foot, reach for my right knee, and then try to dial in this one about the same timing on both leg patterns. So they're stretching open, so it's external rotation. It's an internal leg stretch, right? Groin stretch. So my left hand holds the belt, and I want to be responsible to grasp at the belt and then try to let the leg be guided by its tension to stretch it, right? So this is a really vulnerable pose for most people, but you're in a safe place, so you can stretch out the legs. And certainly there's a lot of lymph drain that's in this pose because there's so much in the groins, there's so much in the armpits. So we want to work on maintaining the shape for a good minute. We've been here almost a minute to this shape. The shape of sensation. And now the legs, the groin stretch, we're going to add to that. So bring the left leg back up almost all the way, but not too far to straight up. And then push your right foot into the belt. Let both feet be into the belt this time. So this preps us for legs up. So we're getting into this in the beginning phase. So the kind of drainage action in the body is a little different today. So when I push out with the feet, I can either hold the piece of the belt that's closest to me. Some people prefer that for coordinating their back muscles in the shape. And some are fine with the arms resting out. I like to hold onto the belt if I have a choice, but I have to keep the resistance with my feet. Otherwise, they'll just shuffle back in together. So pushing in and up, holding the ceiling up. So notice that in how you calculate the change in the thigh energy. So I'm going to slide my feet together. You got to hold the belt for this version. So they're right in. And then you can either hold onto the belt with both hands and let your legs up be here, or you can take the belt off and add your sandbag to the soles of your feet. So I break sand here at my lower ribs, breaks it apart. And then as I put the sand on my soles, I'm going to push forward and then up. It's almost as if you're doing a little bit of a trust game with that. Worst case scenario, your sand falls off and you have to get up and get it. But at least you're working the leg requirement of the hamstring strength, right? It's like squat strength. So if your knees are a little delicate when you're out in the field with the knees bending, this is a good exercise to properly start to strengthen that cartilage. So we flex naturally with a sandbag if you have that. And then get a feel of the thigh tundra. Feel how it reverses. And so you don't have to grip up your quads. They're doing enough already. Just let the legs flush. You can either hold your elbows overhead. I'd recommend something where your arms are connecting behind you. And let that be a balance challenge. So addressing some balance work here. If you're holding on to an elbow, switch the crossing. Feel the weight of your head back. Give a few more moments here. We're doing well getting our inversions in the beginning. So how much time we spend with a mild inversion is essential to intensifying the flush of lymphatic circulation. The blood pressure lowers significantly enough that if you've got to get up and go run it off, you want to be slow with that process of getting to standing. Okay, now I'm going to uncross through my arms if I'm holding them, and then we'll start the process of moving away from this shape. So bend your knees, feel the leg press, remove the sand, and then let's add a block between the knees. Okay, if you have one of those mid-sized balls, you can also use that. I like the block sometimes for just the definition of it's nice. All the props are helpful. So I'm going to go a little side to side, and a little means a little. So instead of completely dropping off my bolster, you might assess when your back is near an adjustment, right? So feel when you rock over to one hip, the knees go with that rocking motion. How does the back respond? So you're trying to stretch in that lower sheath of your quadratus lumborum, so that side, deep in the back of the waist, reaching to the side muscle. That's a slightly decent explanation. Okay. Now, last time we moved back center, and we have the knees, the legs have to squeeze the block. Okay. There's only hope if you can hold on to the block for this one. So my knees move in towards chest. Keep the legs muscling into that block. Hands on bolster next to your waist, and then carefully push the bolster forward off of your back body on the floor in front of your rear. Put your feet on it, and then lift up your hips. Okay, so I push down to lift up. So energetically, the arms could be besides you. And let's take a belt, and my belt is buckled still, so it's probably going to be fine if it's still connected, but if you don't like it to be in a small length, you can unbuckle it. So I'm going to hold my belt under my back with my palms open. Yes, my rear is still up, so if you're getting fatigued here in the leg muscles, you simply lower your rear down and you take two breaths, and then you lift back up. Okay, so I'm holding onto the belt, and I'm going to grab the belt so my pinkies are touching to start, and then I'm going to slide my hands out so they feel a good shoulder width apart. I don't know what feeling shoulder width is actually, but they have a little width with them, but they're still pretty taut. Okay, now give a little more space on each side and see if you can roll your left shoulder down and in and your right shoulder down and in towards the mid-back. Push into your down to lift up, down to lift up. That's significant. Push down to lift up. And now as you lift up your hips, that's usually the opposite of what we do during the day, right? We push down and we kind of go downwards. So try to keep the yoga attitude here. Push down, lift up through body. And then I'm going to hold onto the belt still, palms open, but I'm still gripping it, and lower my spine down. You'll probably sit on the belt maybe. You might. That's okay. It's a reminder that there's still work to do. Okay, so I hold onto the belt. I try to open up my ribs with my back on the floor. Okay, now inhale, fill up the core, belly full. Exhale, push into the bolster, push down to power the pelvis up. Now the arms might get a little tired with this, so pull with your hands. And this time we'll let go of the belt. You can put it out to the side yard. And let your hands be open. And then bring them both overhead. Stretch them straight back, palms downwards. Turn the palms open towards sky. And then lift the hands to the sky and lower the spine down. It's nice to be guided very specifically through the spinal cord. Okay, now we're going to take a few drawbridges at our own pace. So some of you might do two, some might do one incredibly slow drawbridge. It's up to you to do two or one. And as you lower down, notice in increments the places of sensation through your back. You know, the hips usually land much sooner than the arms, so I'm trying to go slow. Coordinate the balance. Okay, now remove the block and let's start windshield wipering the knees. So this feels better for me when my bolster is farther forward. So my feet are wide on the bolster and they're almost as wide as the edge of the bolster. So it's fundamental that you have enough width on your feet, and swish your knees side to side. Feel the beginning of moving into the grain of the hips. Yeah, so we moved from all the coordination we've done so far. Let's just remember what that was. We don't have to describe it intellectually every time, but feeling how you're weaving through the structure, knees side to side. And then as we come back center, you're going to push your bolster with your feet over to the right side of your mat, and then put your right foot onto the floor, left foot crosses up to the right knee, left knee open. Okay, start here and thread the needle 1. So we bring our knees in towards our chest and hold on behind the right leg. You can hold on the leg or below the knee. Now, if you've got some knee healing going on, this is likely not the choice is below the kneecap. But if it feels fine and there's no reservation, it's likely a deeper stretch. But if your knee's healing, it's not a deeper stretch, it's a deeper hurt. So you could hold the back of the leg too. I like the leg straight up, personally. I know this isn't always how it's taught, but one of my favorite versions is anytime I can drain my leg, so it can give my feet a little bit of vitality. Anytime I can do that, get them up. I still get a hip stretch. So if I bend my knee, it's maybe a couple points on my hip, but I know the next stretch is all hip. So feel the low back, ease. Easy pleasy, here we go. Right foot down, right leg straight, left leg crosses over to bolster. That's pretty simple. So if you have a ball, right, you can place that right here at the sacrum. If you have a block, that works fine. Right? It's okay. And then I put a sandbag on my exterior left thigh. Okay, so feel where that support is. Now, previously, in the last episode, right, we had the sand on the top of the thigh. So now we're moving it across the layers, closer to the knee is likely to feel a little more soothing, even though it not necessarily feels like as much pressure, but it stretches across the back muscles. So you be the decider. The left arm is stretching wide. Your head turns left. Rest your eyes, your face. Emphasize that this is about the hip and the lower back. You have props set right near those spaces, so it knows that there's something up. Your right leg could bend, it could stay lengthy, it could be bendy. I try to squiggle my foot and see if I can bend my right knee a little bit. Just not so much that it's triggering the inner knee or the outer knee. You know when the knee is feeling uncomfortable. Okay, so let the chest broaden and enjoy. This could be enjoyable to help the body along on its lifetime of experiences, helping it be open, adjusting the times. And I get that full sweep of the left hip here. So my right hand is going to reach up towards the outer left leg, whether it's a sandbag or not. Either way is great. And encourage that left thigh to reach towards the right. Right, you could try to straighten the leg a little bit. Sometimes that's pretty interesting for the fibers of the back. If you have an instant tingling or a numbness, I would start to back off on how far you go with that. But if the fibers are ready, they're ready. If they're not, just be patient. Okay, now as we adjust to moving out of this frame, what I want us to do is come into reclining cobbler's pose. toes, okay? So we'll take the sand off. We'll move our object from the sacrum. Sacrum objects. Okay, feet together, knees out. Now, this is likely a better pose for you to have some blocks under your legs, right? Even if you could be there without your blocks, it's better for your SI joint to have this support. So my blocks are kind of obnoxiously close to my hips, and that doesn't feel super good in my legs. Like, just the fibers are pushing. So I'm going to pivot my blocks so they're contoured. So instead of the flat, I pivot it so it's right on the edge. That might work for you. You might not be using blocks, okay? But the key with something under the legs is also that the feet merge together. So you have this cobbler's pose. And I don't usually call it cobblers, but that is its distinct name, translation sometimes. Going through some old books, remembering what we called this before. So now when you have this little bit of a basin for the pelvis, for the pelvic floor, stretch your arms over chest, interlace fingers, press the palms to the ceiling. Try to lift up your shoulders from the back. Right? It's a little strange to try to lift them up as if there was a hand under each shoulder and pulling them up. Cross the right arm over left. Give yourself a big hug to reach around to the shoulders, pulling them up, stretching them, stretching your back so the shoulder blades spread apart. Change the crossing of the arms, left arm over or opposite, and reach for the blades and try to spread them apart. Get in there. Now, if your head is kind of arching, feel the back of your head center on the blanket. Uncross the arms. How easy it is to get out. Okay. Now I'm going to move my bolster left side of my mat to the side yard. Okay. And then when I switch the leg position, I start out with thread the needle. Okay. So I'm going to move my left knee to point out, my right foot to left, right ankle to left knee. And then as you switch through, I want you just to get that feel of drawing the knees in and the leg may be up, hold the back of the leg. There's a lot of options here. I mean, you could put a block on the back of your left leg too, right? So then the shoulders have to work. It's kind of interesting, all the different props you can add to things you never thought of, but they're there to use. They're essentially important for this practice. Yeah, so I hold on to the back of my left leg or I hold on below my left knee. Notice the differences sometimes in the beginning and then just accepting where this side is at. It's probably different. It could be completely unexplainable what's different sometimes, but it feels different. So give it equal opportunity, right? Equilibrium. Maybe you rock a little side to side if something's not quite the same. Yeah, I get the hip dizzy. I'll have no idea how I got there. So I feel a little bit of movement through the back body. Now I want to get this right hip ready for the crossover. So what should I do? Should I stay in this kind of figure 4, right? Number 4 pose. This works for some of us. For some, it might be nice to lower the foot, feel the right knee open, adapt, left leg down, right leg over, right? Block or ball to the sacrum, sand or not to the exterior right thigh. You've been on your back for a little bit of time now, so we're almost coming up from our back, from our reclining set, okay? So this is good to really refine this fully. So I'm going to keep that leg crossed over on the bolster and then stretch my right chest open. Yeah, and consider it is the chest, the arm, the brain turns, and the weight that's in the left hip is significant. So you might notice if you spend a lot of energy rolling your chest open on the right arm, maybe you want to work a little bit on putting some energy into your left hip. And so that puts a little more weight into your bolster, even though it's a leg on the floor, okay? Yeah, so the left leg can bend. This could help the weight transfer into your hip. And then when my head turns right, left arm open or left hand on the leg. Yeah, that feels great, right? Having the hand cross it through, kind of threading. And then you might close your eyes and spend a few moments scanning where the energy is weaving in your body. Why not, right? Why not? Why not spend some time on that? There's plenty of other mental projects you have, but this is your time for your body to be inspired, and you're the one doing the practice. Somehow you got motivated to do this. So get a feel for what's useful in this shape, and breathing helps. Slow, deep breath. Give a few more. The pose is not expired yet. The body's still marinating. Now follow the next exhalation to its end. Start to transfer the weight of the sand. Okay. So our focus now is to shift that right knee. So I've got to move my block or ball away from my sacrum. And you want to bring your knees into chest. Now, feel the low back lengthen. Well, it's only so much that that box of the low back can stretch back with the knees. And then do a couple spinal rolls. You might want to roll up and back, let the legs swing. I like to keep the legs pretty bent for both directions for my neck. And then when you come up, come all the way up and stay, and then grab your blanket and bolster, bring it all into the center, okay? So what we're gonna do is sit onto a blanket. If you like to sit on two, that's fine. But you might put your other blanket, your accessory blanket, for future fun to the side, so it's not behind you, or you're sitting on it, one or the other. And my right knee bends, and I put a block under the knee and a sandbag on top of the right thigh. This is optional, sand is always an option, okay? And then I'm gonna take the bolster, after I grab my hair here, okay? I'm gonna take the bolster in front and lift up and lean in. Okay, noticing that, well, we don't have to spend energy noticing what pose we came from, but these have a specific pattern, right, as I link them together. So we've had this right leg crossed over, now we have it externally rotated. It's just across internally, and now it's external. So as you lean forward, try to stretch your right ankle. Okay, so I have my right foot, it's turned out just like it was in that cobbler's pose. So I have the foot open, I'm trying to work with my foot turning out. And then I want to flex the foot. Okay, so as I lean forward, Stretch the waist, lift up the heart, exhale forward. Inhale, lift up the torso, exhale forward, breathing. And now maintain the length of your back as long as that will reach, and feeling where the brain might be between the arms. Okay, now I try to keep the feet pretty interactive here, so they're flexing. Okay, now as you lower down the bolster, well actually let's do this so we're pretty smart with our props. You've got an extra blanket, I suspect, or a towel. I'm going to kind of make that into a little bit of a roll. It's not perfect roll, it's kind of pushed together, so it's right next to my bolster edge, the short end away from me. And then as I lower it down, okay, I'm going to move the sandbag aside. And I'm going to set up for this leg, right leg, that was turned out to be next to the bolster, right? So I went from open to sitting on my right hip. Okay, left thigh is back. So good to have all these props. Okay, so I've got a towel or a block on the inside of the left knee, and it might be better to have a towel for some people. This might be too much bulk. So as I lean into a side sage of this perspective with the bolster lengthwise, I've got my blanket under. That's kind of satisfying to have that support under my ribs. Okay, now if this doesn't work for your shoulder, you have variations you can work with. You could turn this bolster so it's horizontal and your arm would slide right between the bolster and the blanket. You might have to add a block under the blanket so your height of your head is sufficient. But when I'm here, I'm getting quite a stretch in my arm and my shoulder. And my head is actually pushing into that stretch. So my left arm, I'm going to start with it pretty passive. This is as passive as it gets. Passive asana. Okay. Left leg can stay on the block. If you're not liking that block, you can move it away and stretch the thigh farther back. Sometimes it's about the balance of the legs that helps the knee on the back leg. So I'm trying to get this so it's kind of a leaping position for my legs, although I'm on my side. They have a leaping instruction as far as my nervous system knows. And then my left arm can stretch over. I can hold onto the left wrist with my right hand. That feels satisfying for the ribs, doesn't it? Yeah, it's a little bit of work. This isn't necessarily the most relaxing of shapes, but the order of motion in the ribs is obvious. So a few moments here. Breathing in slow. Breathing out, relax the heart. Now, if your neck is feeling a little strange with it, remember turning your head and feeling it move into your right arm is helpful. Okay, now left arm is going to lower down easy, okay? So we'll branch between these two sides by working with a medley of all fours, cat-cow, and spinal kind of development. So when we get into spinal development, right, we really require some balance of upper and lower body. So move the sand away, and then as you lower your hands, you're going to feel a little twist, and we may as well get a moment of twist because that's an important part of our practice is spinal rotation. So feel when your hands are on the floor and feel when your right knee is moving upwards, so it's crossed through. Now see, this is a bit like a pigeon pattern, right? It's getting there, except what's missing is your right hip isn't back. This hip is up, not back. So we'll simply bring the left thigh to the right thigh. turn so that we're on our hands and knees. You want to be on one blanket under your knees. And what I'm going to find that's helpful here is to move the blanket that's under the bolster away, okay? And bring my hands under my shoulders. And then as my toes are under, round your back into a cat shape, chin to chest. Inhale, arch the spine. Exhale, round the back, chin to chest, spine stretch. Inhale, arch. Exhale, round the back. Okay, now with the toes under, we're going to look back towards them, look to toes, lift up knees, and as you have your brain lowering towards your bolster, remember the farther the distance is from hands to feet, the more likely you will touch down to your bolster, okay? So if it's easy for you, you're going to walk your hands a little farther back to strengthen in your upper body. But let this be a stretch in your upper body. Okay, now lower down the knees. Step the right foot to the top right corner of your mat. Lengthen the front of the left thigh into a lunge or gecko pose. So my hands could be on blocks or the floor. This is a little intense with my hands on the floor for my legs. So you might take a couple blocks under hands. And if you don't have blocks, you might put your hands on your bolster or the cushion. That could be helpful. Whatever you use as a bolster. There's lots of thick pillows people use. You can get pretty creative finding objects around the house for practice. Okay, now let's lean back to a reverse gecko. So my left knee stays on blanket, toes relaxed. Stretch the top of the foot. And then when I lean back, I'm going to reach back and let the right foot flex and stretch the right leg straight. So I'm leaning back. Head downwards. Downward brain. Now come back and then shift sides. Right knee back, besides left, left foot steps out to the top left corner. And then lunging, feeling the top of the right thigh moving downwards. Okay. If you have that stability in your arms, it can be helpful with the blocks. Think about stability from the downward pressure up, right? My thighs stretching, my waist is stretching. There's many areas that we're emphasizing here, but in this position, feel when your waist stretches forwards. Now hands press and lean back. Left foot, toes up, foot flexing. Lean back for a moment. Now the back line of the body usually gets quite a bit of sensation through practice. It's the front realm. I think in our daily habit that misses out, like the quad stretching and so forth. And the waist, the ribs, the chest. So when we move back into the knees right now, I want you to take your bolster and move it forward so it's across the top of the mat, horizontal. I'm going to place a block in front of that towards me, but if the block is too high, you can use a blanket instead or a towel. Okay, so take a pretty deep stretch here for your chest and your front body. So first things first, let's put the hands on the floor next to the block and Move the legs back, stretch back into an upright push-up pattern, and lengthen the front of the legs and reach the chest forward and up. Yeah, try to work away from pressure on your knees and elongate the core, influence the centerpiece of the body. It sure works in my back though. I can't say it's the best back sensation, so I'm working my way to weave to get both areas respectfully cared for. So lengthen. There's only one way to do that, right? Is to place the bones in structure to stretch. That's what we're spending all this time doing. Now, when I move back, I'm going to try to carefully move back so my feet stay shins long, okay? And then when you're here, you're going to slide your hands back so you're on the knees. And with the knees stand, I'm going to move my hips forward and put my hands so they're above my rear in my low back situation. And the hands are going to stay there as my hips move front. And this is my maximum I'll work with, and start to move my chest open, my shoulders back. I'm comfortable with my neck flexion here, but some may want to lift their head up. Be a little careful of the jaw. Now, if my head is centered, you can tell it's not always the best neck position. It's more neck forward. Okay, so if we can feel the chest lift for a moment. Hands have to stay on the body to support your spine. Okay, now as your hands move to your hips, see if the hands could encourage the hips to center down. Come to neutral so you're centered. Okay, now as you go forward, you're going to reach your hands to the bolster. Okay, so I'm reaching a pretty big child's pose. So my forehead on block, my hands as wide on the bolster as they can go. Knees apart, feet apart. Now everything has some distance apart from it here. So I want to stay pretty classic with that. The tendency is the toes try to get close. So feel where your forehead is on the block. If it's too much, you can put a blanket under your forehead. Some people are quite fine here with their head to the floor. It's a very deep stretch in the chest. Probably something under your head is best, something. It doesn't have to be the block, maybe you like a towel instead. But let's be here for about 5 more breaths. So get a full reach in the arms. Feel the ribs expand in the back and lengthen the tailbone back for the arch. Now see if you can keep moving into this without too much peaking. Okay, so hands on the floor, fingers open, and then as you lift up to table, toes under, hips back so you have that cow spine, arching the spine, and then lift knees and start to reach the hips back and the heels down. Stretch the armpits. Push the floor away. Feet together. Left leg up towards the sky. Give it a moment. Left leg up. Balance out the strength in the arms. Switch legs up. Left foot down. Right leg kicks up. 3-legged dog. Feel the reach through that right heel. Head down. Okay, now lower the right foot and lower the knees. And then prep for side sage with the left hip down. So I've got a blankie. It doesn't have to be a perfect roll. Remember, sometimes it's good to accept what is there. And then set your left hip Okay, so we're going backwards on this side. So we're reaching through that left side. My right knee feels so-so without something under it. So if you want something under your knee, you could have a blanket, or sorry, not a blanket, a towel or a block or one of those small ball to put under that. So feel if this line of energy from your hip to the outer thigh band into the knee is relaxing. So I have a sandbag option, exterior, and then let the interior sensation lengthen. Yeah, so the waist, the leg. It's interesting how much sensation can be felt through the, right where the joint pockets are, right? The hip, the armpit, the shoulder joint. And the waist can be a little bit of a kind of a silent space for movement. So work your way towards letting the props hold you up. Lean into them. Breathe. You know, that right arm could be down, it could be overhead. Let's spatially take a moment here as we lean into the bolster. We're going to turn, hands on the sides, on the floor besides the bolster, take the sandbag aside, okay? And then use this rotation of your thoracic vertebrae to help you push the bolster forward. And then bring the left knee out, the right leg straight open, and a block or a ball under the left knee, and a sandbag on top of the left thigh. Okay. So we're kind of going full halfway through the spaces of the body, right, in today's set. So my bolster's up, I'm leaning into it. Yeah, so get a feel here for pushing it enough forwards, leaning, sensing, you know, especially in this final spinal, if there's anything that you need to kind of quirk around in your body, if it's feeling a little quirky in your core, moving, letting your head bob. Flex the feet, perhaps. These are simply options of focus, not necessarily a rule by any means. Now stay with the energy of leaning forwards, feeling that left inner thigh and maybe the right inner thigh stretch. And we'll let both legs create the same directional flow. So let's bring the block so it's still besides the left leg. If it's not there, add one over there and let the left leg stretch out. So it's stretching out to about 10, 11 o'clock on the left-hand side. I'm going to put a block under the right leg so it has equal support. And the sand is not too helpful here if I only have one leg sand. So I'll go minus. If you happen to have a couple sandbags, you could use one on each. As you lean forward, door one is here. I'm going to go with the prim and proper spine up version. You could keep leaning. That's okay, but when it comes down to it, our idea is to be able to stand better, right, in our day. So notice the muscles that revolve around the spine, how this is useful for them. Now, if there's anyone that wants to keep moving front and keep reaching and lower the bolster down, you're welcome to do that. You can also put the bolster closer to your head and lean your forehead onto the bolster, hands down. You don't have to have the blocks under the legs. You can take them out. And then if you want the bolster, again, all the way to the floor, you could reach down to the bolster. This might be a possibility for some. But mentally notice the awareness of the thigh length. And let's try to keep that length when we put the legs up on the bolster. Okay, so when we get to our final shape here, if you want some options besides what's on the mat, right? You can also put legs up the wall. If you are a shoulder stand person, you could do a chair shoulder stand. And I'm going to do Stonehenge, right? So I'm going to have my bolster bench. So with my back here, I'm going to let the back get even more enjoyment. So when I move up, my back is craving that. So I'm going to move my blocks mid-setting, and then I'll add my bolster and maybe add a blanket. And my legs are still encouraged right now. They're still moving outwards. So when I put the blanket over, if you have a sandbag and you're using it across your ribs for this final pose, and you like the idea of sand on your shins for classes sometimes, and you don't really want this version, this is one, you could also take the blanket around your legs and swaddle. Okay, and that gives a little feeling of support. Okay, so I'm going to lower back and put sand across my ribs. If you feel safe with it, you can put the sand across your shins. Just know getting out of it could be a bit of a back challenge if you have sand stuck on your shins. So I'm in this pattern for releasing. It feels really nice for the legs to have had the work they had recently, and now they're flushing. And I'm going to spend some moments processing the practice, absorbing the benefits from it. So my sand is at the top, so when I breathe in, my arms resting, I really can feel the weight training from the sandbag. Really feel the inhale filling the lungs, and the exhale relaxing out of the mouth. See if you can let the belly elevate and feel it coast back to the floor. Purposely strengthening the diaphragm, the primary respiratory muscle. It's a muscle, right? So we're working on strengthening our breathing muscles with the sand weight, with the deliberate breath force. Strengthening our lungs using their potential that's untapped. And likely the mind can get a little bit more quiet. Feel the heels elevated. Feel them kind of floating. So the feet are in more of a float. Now with an inhale, superior to any of them you've had, feel the lungs. Exhale out through the mouth. One more superior breath. Empty it out. And then let the breath fall into pattern. And mentally scanning the body and maybe mentally register that you've been in practice, that this can influence your body, your mind, your future. Now feel if you can let the legs and the feet still feel a little bit of float. So I'm going to move the sand off of the ribs. And you might let the feet, since they're independent right now, they're not reaching together, you might circle them, feel around the ankles, notice the connecting layer of moving your feet out and around. Kind of interesting to experience the little things in your body that you use to step into endlessly to get you around. Right, the busy mind gets the feet busy. So feel the business of the feet and let them relax. And then feel the lower back start to motion so the ribs are in an arch, and then I'm trying to flatten my back quite deeply into the floor. Tailbone tucks a little bit, and then one leg at a time, drawing in, using your hands to hold the legs and draw them in towards the chest. Feel that comfortable hold of the legs. Rock from side to side, minimum a couple times each side before flinging yourself over to the side, and then use your hands to help you come up. And you can sit cross-legged any way, bolster or blanket under your seat. Feel the legs cross. Feel how the hands are almost in a crossed pattern in front of you, palms open. Feel the shoulders moving up and feel them roll back. Now as the hands move in unity, palms touching, thumbs to the heart space, brain reaches down to that awareness, and let's unite in this collective, breathing together in. Exhaling, bowing into your heart. In gratitude, namaste. Thank you.